Going to remove the fan blade now from the motor shaft. Tools that we'll be using on this is adjustable wrench to loosen the nut, a pair of channel locks to hold the shaft, the motor shaft.
There is typhoon in it.
Going to hold the motor shaft from underneath the fan blade because a lot of times the blade has been on there for so long. The collar could be rusted here. Very difficult to get out. Very difficult to get off without this kind of a twisting. I'm going to have to hold the shaft and twist the blade back and forth while I'm holding the shaft still once I loosen the set screw. And also sometimes the shaft itself is either marred or mushroomed, or there might be spurs on it that keep this collar from coming off easily. So I'm just being prepared for the worst case scenario on this. Once I get the fan blade off, I'm going to measure the shaft from the motor, from the face of the motor to the end of the shaft, and mark the new motor shaft so I know about where to cut it. I'll get to that when the new motor arrives. The shaft has one flat spot that runs the full length, and that is for your set screw, your bolt. You screw it into that flat spot to keep your fan blade from spinning on the shaft. That's what the flat spot is for. So when you put the new blade on, make sure that your bolt is lined up with that flat spot. That's not too bad. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to get some. I'm gonna get some WD on it. WD-40. To get solid on. I used a little spray lubricant, and it came right off without too much trouble at all. So here you can see the flat spot where the set screw goes. It's usually marked because they really tighten those things down. Turning this motor, it feels pretty stiff, so it was making a lot of noise and then stopping, locking up in the middle of the cycle. This oil was already there. It could be the bad bearing, lost its lubricant. That's pretty common for it to go up and down, but it might be a little bit too much more than what we're looking for. But that's usually not normal to see oil leaking out of it, so that's probably what happened. The bearing seal blew out. When you're handling your fan blades, be very careful with them because they are set precisely for a certain angle of attack to push the right amount of air. And any pressure at all that could bend the blade or knock it out of adjustment. Some of them even have counterweights on them. There's probably one here. If that falls off, it could cause your fan blades to become very unbalanced, and it could cause more damage. Even though it's spinning correctly, being out of balance can take out a motor bearing. I've seen them bad enough to where they actually hit the coils and release the refrigerant of the unit and pretty much ruins everything. So again, be very careful with these. Don't lay anything on them, don't drop them. put it away safely. If you gotta keep it disassembled for an extended amount of time so it's not damaged at all. I'm going to remove the wiring conduit right now. This motor has a pre-installed wiring, I don't know what you call it here, but where the conduit slips onto it. Conduit slips onto it. The new one may or may not have that. Either way, we're going to use this conduit on the new wiring. Let's pull it out. Going to cut away this little clip here that attaches it to the body of the AC unit. Doing this one-handed, so. Okay, got that out of the way. Let me get it pulled off. There it is. We'll use this on the new motor. Now to take the motor off, I'll turn over the whole enclosure, and there's 4 nuts holding the motor to the underside of the enclosure. I've taken off a couple of the nuts already. 2 more to go, and the enclosure will just, the lid will just lift right off the fan. Don't lose these. There we go. Alright, halfway through now, just to get the new motor put back in. This plate was up here. There's the new motor. Thank you, Amazon. Here's a side-by-side comparison. You can see I was talking about how the shaft on new motors are made for pretty much universal applications. This was a motor that was put into the unit at the factory. This is obviously a replacement motor. See, it's deeper here. I hope that's not going to be a problem. Now I'll have to make sure, with the addition of the depth of the motor, the shaft is going to have to be cut a lot shorter than what it was over here. see how it goes. I don't think there's going to be a problem with it hitting the top of the compressor, but that is something that I definitely have to check. The original motor was also one directional. The new motor, you can change the direction that it spins using these wires. Those directions are here. It's also able to run on different voltages. That's why there's so many different more. That's why there are so many more different wires than there are on the original one. So we use those wires to run different voltages according to which wires we're going to use. The new motor has longer threaded bolts here coming through the face of the motor, which we don't need. You can see there are just bolt heads here on the old motor. So we're going to get rid of this extra link. To do that, you just use your pliers. Go back and forth a few times. And presto. Shortened bolts. One. There you go. It's good to get rid of those because depending on where you put your fan blade on here, they could get in the way of your fan blade. So now that's taken care of. We'll work on the other end of getting these the right length for the fan cover. Alright, I got all the bolts cut to length. Now I'm ready to put it back into the fan enclosure cover. Here's a little trick I learned along the way when working with these motors and the motor shafts and such. I use a box. Either I'm using this box because it already has a hole in it, but you can use any box, like a trash box or whatever, and poke a hole in it and stick the shaft through it. That way your motor is held up and you don't have to worry about balancing it on the shaft when you're working with it. Now I can work with my putting the cover on here. The motor is supported by the box, and again I don't have to worry about balancing in on the shaft and doing all that crazy stuff. So one thing I have to watch for is to make sure the wires are lined up with the hole on the enclosure here. You see the hole here where those wires have to go through. Just going to make sure that that hole is on the same side as the wires. Okay, back out. That's too much. You see the hole. Yeah, so far so good. The wire hole is right there. So wire hole's over here and the wire's right there. So I think we're good right now. Okay, so I'm not going to go ahead and put the nuts back on here. So I have all the crown nuts on now. I just used the new washers, the lock washers, but I didn't use the new little nuts. I used the crown nuts. So take it off, put that out of the way, flip it over. Now we're ready to put the wires through the conduit and then put the fan blade on. And then we will decide which setting we have to use on these wires to see which direction we want it to turn. We need to compare it to the old motor. It's rotating this direction, so we have to make sure this motor rotates the same direction. When you're putting the wires through the conduit, you probably have to put them through one at a time. What I found is, if you take this wire that's like this, it's not going to go through very well or work at all. Just bend it so it's like this. You can push it through. Again, same with this. Just take it and bend it back. See how it didn't go through. What I'm going to do is put them through at the same time. So I'll bend them again. One started, and the second one. See how you kind of have to put one behind the other, otherwise they're too big to go through together. The other two doesn't have connectors, so they can be pushed through pretty easily. There you go. Put them all through. Work your little conduit back up to your motor. This one doesn't have the exact right connector, so the conduit doesn't fit snugly, but work it around to where it fits the best, and we're ready to go. Now for the fan blade. Another thing I did was to get the reversing wires pushed through the fan housing fins so that they can be used once I install it. Because once you install it, you're going to have to test it to make sure that it's turning the right direction. If it's not, you have to switch these two wires with each other. Instead of purple-yellow, you're going to have purple-orange. And instead of brown-orange, you'll have brown-yellow. So we'll get to that. If we need to change anything, we'll see when we get out there. I have the fan blade put on the new motor now. We'll do a spin test and compare it with the old motor. About the same amount of push I put on the old motor. This one spins much longer, much easier, smoother, and it stops slower. The other one had an abrupt stop. Once it got to a certain speed, because the bearings were shot, once it slowed down enough, it just stopped dead. This one comes to a nice, slow stop. But the wires push through. The two brown wires go to the capacitor. One side, the start capacitor for the motor, for the fan motor. But then you have a yellow goes to the power side of the capacitor, and the black goes to the source power end. Ground wire, reversing wires. I'm going to put a zip tie on these so they don't have any chance of falling back into the fan blades. This way, just in case the rotation wasn't right, you can switch it. I wired it according to, I just used 3 wires instead of 4. I disregarded the brown wire with the white stripe. I just hooked it up to the old capacitor and the old leads that I had clipped earlier. I used wire nuts to hook up the wiring, the electric, the power. I'm happy. Now I can see what a real fan motor should do. There's another version of reversing wires. You can see they just used a bundle of wires to tie it so it won't fall back in. They didn't cut the mounting screws down to accommodate the crown nuts, but there are nuts on there holding the motor on. I chose not to go that route.